If a new job or if a job like project manager has been the same job for 5 decades in terms of the actual job title. But what's happening underneath that job in terms of the technical skills, the soft skills, the tools, the technologies to do that job is constantly changing. So what our deep learning is doing is it's taking every job available in the entire labor market and it's looking at all of those changes in real time. So if you in your background had project manager, you're going to be able to see an up-to-date skill set based on what that job entails today.
Welcome to Coffee with Mr. IoT, a weekly chat with Robert Schmidt, Deloitte's chief futurist, and the builders, dreamers, founders, and wild children of the IoT universe. This podcast can also be viewed on the Coffee with Mr. IoT YouTube channel.
Today on my show, we have Sean Hinton, the CEO and founder of Skyhive. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you. What's Skyhive?
So Skyhive, well, let me back up a little bit. In 2016, a group of Syrian women changed my life. And what had happened...
one more time.
Sure.
You grew up what?
A group of,
okay.
Yeah. So the World Bank forecasts that by 2023, more than 52% of the world's workforce will need to be reskilled. Just recently, Amazon announced a $700 million investment to reskill and upskill over 100,000 workers. Skyhive is the world's first deep learning technology that focuses purely on reskilling of companies and people. And so we extract skills from jobs, skills from people, and we find efficiencies and correlations in the movement of human capital.
So I want to use, this is fascinating to me, it's AI, right? And many people talk about AI like it's the big dark thing out there, but here is a great example of, I think, where we can dive in. Sort of like, tell us a little bit more, what deep learning, what's deep learning versus AI, and how does it actually work? What's the AI, the deep learning part in all of this?
Sure. So in our case, we have layers of AI. So we have everything from natural language processing that processes data, the stuff that goes out to the internet and takes data and brings it in.
So I sign up. I come on. I sign up on Skyhive. You take my profile and you take the data, and then the NLP looks at all my words and everything.
Yeah, so in the case of if you're signing up on Skyhive, you would just simply upload your resume and automatically a skills profile is created from you. That's natural language processing. It's reading the document you've uploaded and it's extracting data from that document. So then there's machine learning, and machine learning is often confused with AI. Machine learning goes back to even Amazon recommends, back 10, 12, 13 years ago, where we're looking at one piece of information and connecting it with another piece of information on a particular database. When you get into deep learning or neural networks, you're talking about the machine thinking for itself. So we've given it some parameters through which it can think, and then we fill it with data, and then it's making decisions on what to do and how to arrange that data based on the parameters that it's been given. So it's learning as it goes. This is a neural network deep learning technology.
So, took my resume, NLP made skills out of this. I don't know, how many skills are there in your database? 1,000, 50? What?
About 7,000.
7,000. Okay, so it picks and says, out of this I have, okay, I'm gonna be aggressive, maybe 50.
Right.
Or what's the typical skill?
Yeah, 30 to 50.
30 to 50. Okay, so 30. And then it goes and puts into the ML, the machine learning. The machine learning then takes that and maps it to other skills?
Exactly. So it's thinking, it's looking at the data that comes out of that resume. It's saying, okay, now let's take that data and look at the database of total skills, total activity right now on the database. And now we're coming back to your profile and saying, these are the skills that are prominent within your background.
Okay, and then the deep learning part is which part now?
The deep learning part is the part that that document is comparing to. So it's saying, okay, there's yesterday's skills and 6 months ago and a year ago, and how are all of those skills changing? So for example, if a new job or if a job like project project manager's been the same job for 5 decades in terms of the actual job title. But what's happening underneath that job in terms of the technical skills, the soft skills, the tools, the technologies to do that job is constantly changing. So what our deep learning is doing is it's taking every job available in the entire labor market and it's looking at all of those changes in real time. So if you in your background had project manager, you're going to be able to see an up-to-date skill set based on what that job entails today.
I have to tell you, this might be the best explanation of an AI with an example I've ever heard. I love this.
Thank you.
By the way, it doesn't sound scary suddenly, does it? I mean, I don't know. There's this whole thing about AI is going to take my job away. Could a human being even do what we just said? And how long would it take a human being to do this for one person?
No, and that's a really good example. I mean, my company, Skyhive, is a B corporation, so there's a lot of social impact focus. We want to help companies and communities reskill and be prepared for the changing nature of the future of work. AI in and of itself is not scary. It's the applications of AI that could be scary, right? So in our case, what we do is, I mean, you would need thousands of people crunching information all at the same time, and who would want to do that 24 hours a day? Because we built an AI that can do that, that's no longer required. And so you're able to do things with data and information in a positive way that can help us understand things better and advance more rapidly. In terms of the changing nature of work and jobs, there are virtually zero jobs or very few jobs that are going to be fully automated. And so there'll be 20% of a job automated, 40% of a job automated, not 100% of a job. And so the question is, as it relates to future of work and reskilling, the real critical question is, what are we doing to help people understand what to do with that 40% or that 20%? Because that's far more interesting work than whatever is being automated, like invoicing, for example. If somebody's job, 40% of their job is to do invoicing all day, well, if we had a technology that could do that automatically, that would free that person up to do more interesting things in the company, and that's really what we're trying to get to the heart of.
I'm always curious, particularly with startups like yours. I've often have this question about Jeff Bezos when he started selling books online. Did he think that he's going to actually have Amazon Web Services as a company later on? I have to admit, I doubt it. I think this developed over time. Yeah. But for you, my question to you is, how did you come up with this idea? And then what has changed since the day of you starting to today?
Yeah, and so that really speaks to my background. So prior to launching Skyhive, I was president of the world's largest water park company. So it was an international company that was focused on the architecture, engineering, manufacturing, and construction project management of water parks and water park attractions.
Quite a shift from...
I was going to say, it's a natural transition
yeah, exactly.
to go into AI,
Not
but
really.
What a lot of people don't think about is that industry, the water park industry, is an extremely dangerous industry in the sense that people are going down slides at 4 meters per second, 5 meters per second, with no straps, no harnesses, 8 degrees of human movement, et cetera. So there's a lot of sophistication that goes into the engineering and design. So, if I made an AI that recommended a skill that was maybe a stupid skill that didn't make sense, that's not really harming anyone. But in my past life, if we built something that wasn't to exact specifications, we could really harm somebody. Anyways, prior to the water park industry, I spent 10 years consulting to the government of Canada in labor economics and labor mobility. And so spent thousands of hours understanding the movement of people, the recognition of credentials, competency mapping, and the gaps that existed between what our idea of a labor market was and what a fluid labor market was. So fast forward to 2016, a group of Syrian women had escaped Syria during the Civil War. I'm a member of the Young Presidents Organization and attended the YPO Global Congress in Dubai. That group of Syrian women spoke to us and talked about the atrocities of the treatment of women during the Syrian Civil War. And that immediately shifted my mindset and gave me a purpose to want to do a small thing to contribute to the world in terms of what my energy and experience would be. And I realized as an employer and as someone who had spent a lot of time focused on skills and labor economics, that we all have gifts and talents and abilities, but we don't necessarily explicitly know what they are. If I asked you, Robert, what are your 30 to 50 skills? You go, maybe you get 8, 10, off the top of your head. And I was thinking to myself, well, with advancements in computing power and the reduction of cost to access that computing power, why are we still in this situation? When we can crunch a lot of information at the same time, why are we still in this situation that we don't actually know what those skills and capabilities are? And then we definitely don't know how to apply them to a context of a labor market. And so if I'm a welder and I've been welding for 20 years, what if my job ends tomorrow and there's no other welding jobs available and I have to go and find something else to do? Why don't we have a technology that helps people understand that the skills and abilities that you learned as a welder are extremely valuable to a number of different occupations. You just don't know what those are. And we've been able to prove amazing use cases with that, with coal workers, for example, that we're able to shift them in terms of recognizing their prior skills, moving them into training and upskilling to get them into new environmental technologies, renewable energy type work. That is the future. And so, and how has it changed? The applications of our technology are quite broad and far broader than I would have expected. Our main clients are Fortune 500 companies and governments, so we work with the military, we work with very, very large, sophisticated companies. And I had really built the technology for that welder, and I didn't realize that it was capable of doing so much more.
Amazingly fascinating, right? I sit here and I kind of like, my mind goes to, well, how do I know that you picked the right 30 skills, and how do you know that those skills apply? And really it only shows in true use cases, like you said, when a coal worker suddenly gets reskilled and used. An amazing example, and I love the example. You talked about something that triggered something else in my mind. You talked about this experience with the Syrian women and how you were driven to do a different job, do something different. I want to ask you a personal question. How has this changed you personally? Not professionally what you do, but also personally. I'm curious about that.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, it was that day that I found what I say I found my purpose. And what that means is the definition of purpose for me prior to that was an academic exercise where I would sit with executive coaches or organizational behavioral, consultants, and we would write on whiteboards some words that we would define as our purpose. That moment defined my purpose, and what I define, my own definition of what purpose is now is it's an undying sort of love affair with solving a problem. It doesn't matter if you're accepted or rejected. It doesn't matter if you succeed or fail. You'll continue to get up every single day and pursue solving that problem or fulfilling that purpose. And so, and that has been every single day for me since that moment. And it's an absolute pleasure to be able to have the opportunity to be, in San Francisco at the Singularity University Global Summit, speaking on stage on the future of work and having this conversation with you. It's an absolute pleasure to be able to do that. That's my purpose. So.
It's great. I mean, I sort of sit here with you, and maybe this comes across, or maybe it doesn't in film, but I feel that passion in you. I feel that purpose in you. Have you talked to the Syrian women again?
No, but I did have the amazing pleasure of being invited to speak on that very stage earlier this year at the AI Everything conference in Dubai. And that was an extremely special moment for me, where 3 years ago I was sitting in the audience having my purpose defined for me. And 3 years later, I got to go back and speak on that stage and talk about AI and the future of work. So that was a really special moment.
Awesome, I love that. How do you keep, as the CEO, to solving problems and not becoming just a spokesperson or management or something like this? How do you make sure you stay true to that purpose and driving that?
That was probably the hardest part of building the company. Was part of my purpose walking out that day was to create a company that at its very core could be wildly successful from a P&L perspective, but drive social impact in tandem. And that's not an easy exercise. We're not talking about a CSR exercise within an organization or some sort of giving pledge, corporate social responsibility initiative, or a giving pledge or something like that. We're talking about creating a company that at its core can do both things. And so I spent a lot of time articulating that and using sort of every bit of experience and knowledge that I had, because I didn't have a model available to me to go from. And so how I maintain that purpose is we pursue partnerships with 6 underrepresented groups in North America, 7 underrepresented groups in total. These are the groups that if today you opened up the newspaper, you would see record low unemployment. Everybody's talking about record low unemployment. But if you turn to page 2 and you look at unemployment within groups, women, youth, Indigenous communities, Latino communities, physically disabled, veterans, immigrants, or in the case of international refugees, you see double-digit unemployment growth, huge gap between the rich and the poor, huge wage gaps, et cetera. And so we do partnerships with organizations, and we provide our technology for the purposes of advancing R&D to support access to employment and career development for those communities. So that's one way that we keep focused on that. But I think more importantly, in terms of how do we keep and maintain that culture within our organization, we have a governance structure that's extremely focused and supportive on this. So B Corp is one where you actually have to go in, and when you're incorporating your business and doing your articles of incorporation, you have to clearly state that the business is being built just, also for the value creation of shareholders, but also for the value creation of society. In addition to that, it's very important to build a board, an advisory group, and a village of supporters around the company that share that mission alignment. Thirdly, it's important that when I have opportunities like this to speak, that I'm not spending my time with you solely talking about technology and AI, but we're able to get into this discussion as well, and so people can understand that there's more to this than just an interesting technology.
I really got this aspect of what you do with my resume. I want to shift to 2 other spots, and let me start with the obvious one, which is the corporations. How does this impact corporations? Is this about corporations analyzing the skills they have and complementing this? Is this Amazon figuring out where they put their $700 million? How do corporations use your technology, your solution?
Yeah, so I think in 2017, the World Economic Forum released a very pivotal report that talked about the future of work. And they talked about a 10-point plan for helping solve that future. Number 1 on that list was reskilling, but it went into all sorts of different areas around training, development of employees, the changing physical workplace, those types of things. So the first question a company is going to ask itself is to say, what is the work of the future? How do I prepare my company for what is coming in the future with all of this rapid digital transformation and disruption happening in all facets of our business? How do we actually look forward? Well, to look forward, you have to look at the present first, and you need to understand what are the skill sets of my company right now. And so that's kind of the starting point where companies come to Skyhive, is because they want to have a better sense of the skill sets in their company now, not only their skill sets internally, but the skill sets in the industry that they're in or in the labor market at large. And so that's where our technology comes into play, usually from the beginning, where we go in and we'll integrate with an existing technology that has the snapshot of employees, and then we're able to say, okay, this is the skill set that you have today. These are the skills.
So you go and look at their HR system and sort of analyze the people they have and what data do you use out of the corporation?
So in every corporation, when someone is applying for a job, they'll come through an ATS system, or if they're working on an HR technology for payroll and benefits. For us, we just look at name, what you'd see on a resume, basically. So we're not interested in anything else. We're just interested in the type of information we'd see on a resume, and then from there we're able to extract profiles, just like you did with your resume. We do that at a macro level for a company, and then from there we're able to aggregate that data, and we're able to see what's happening at a company level. So what are the strengths in customer service? What are the strengths in sales skills? What are the strengths in engineering, particular engineering skills, et cetera? And where are the gaps? And so what does the industry look like? I mean, we do a lot of work in chemical and petrochemical engineering, these types of things, and there's every company has a different skill set, And that's the really cool part of Skyhive, is that we're able to see those different skill sets because we're not looking at industries on a job level. We're able to go and understand them at a very deep level. And so an engineer title in one company, a petrochemical engineer in one company is not the same in another company. And so understanding those differences is really cool.
I have the feeling you get to know the company at an intimate level that might almost be uncomfortable for them.
Well, I think that it's information that's really important for, I think where this has gone in terms of the issues facing the future of work, it's really now to the C-suite level. It's really now to strategic decision making. The workforce of the next 5-10 years is very, very relevant to the P&L, to the future business strategy of the company. My argument would be it always has been, but I think now there's a much clearer line that's very apparent. And a great example of that would be electric vehicles. And so you see this in the auto industry right now where the workforce of 2023 in the auto, in the big automotive manufacturing companies is completely different than it is today. But you're also dealing with a situation where there's nobody to hire because unemployment is so low. And so you have to look at the skills of your workforce and you have to get folks reskilled and ready for non-combustible engines, possibility of autonomous vehicles, these types of things. It's a totally different skill set than making combustible engines with human-driven cars, et cetera. So I think now the information is kind of mandatory, and if it's available for people, then why not, right?
I started this kind of thought with the corporations thinking about how much of this do you actually need the corporation's data versus how much you actually can find publicly by looking their job descriptions and what they look for and so forth. So I believe there must be a big part you can actually do even without their data. Do you do that?
Yeah, so we look at tens of millions of data points in what we call the labor market. So job postings, CVs, training programs, websites with job profiles, et cetera. And from there, we're extracting what we call real life. And so what this means is, if we're looking at going back to the title project manager, you may have a company and you call project manager one thing, but we have thousands of data points that create a bell curve of what a project manager actually is. And so neither one of those is the right answer. But having that information is very important. And so our clients and our user experience will actually upload their job description, and we provide them with a snapshot of what skills came out of your job description, but what skills are actually in the labor market. And they can choose almost like a menu of skills to create that job based on what they actually need from a skill set perspective.
So I want to get to the last part, and this is sort of the end of our interview anyhow, but I feel like I'm not getting into deep water here, but maybe we can navigate it together, because what came up for me was the data you have and the information you have has a lot of demographic, geographic, and therefore also in a way political, not politics, but political impact. If I am the leader of a city or a leader of an area or of something like this, there's got to be some really useful information that you have there too. How do you interact with those groups, and what's the sort of thought around this? I know you talked about Latinos and other demographics. Talk a little bit about that. How does that play out for you, and how do you deal with keeping the ethical part of AI, I would argue?
Yeah, so for us, we do work with governments, but it's really about helping them with real-time labor market information that can drive policymaking and economic development initiatives. And so an example would be, we worked with the Government of Canada on supporting the recruitment, increasing the recruitment of women into the Canadian Armed Forces. And so we provided data that helped them correlate military jobs with civilian jobs and identify high correlation jobs to military jobs. And so a real crude example would be that a yoga instructor is actually a very high correlated skills match to 6 jobs within the Canadian military, and he or she wouldn't have had an idea that that was possible. And so that's certainly a career pathway. In other cases, we're looking at things like working with Indigenous communities and capturing skills on what we call experiential learning. And so there's a lot of social problems within indigenous communities where members of the community leave reserve, end up in an urban environment, and sort of feel not at home, and end up out of the formal learning system or the formal employment system, and then they end up coming back at some point and want to be put on a pathway. So we work to map the culture-specific skills through dance, art, history, communication, and map those across the labor market to help find employability skills and formal education pathway skills. So we're doing work like this in terms of applying our technology to communities. So we're happy to work with governments. Really, it's about helping with frictional unemployment, structural unemployment, and providing information that can help them better prepare communities for the future of work.
Have you run into situations that you didn't want to do?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
What would be an example of that?
There's requests we've had from militaries. There's things where we're not comfortable helping advance a workforce that's focused on things that are, on a workforce that maybe is not being mobilized for the good of humanity.
Do you personally get involved in those decisions?
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah. I mean, if somebody in the company is going to turn down a client, certainly I'm going to have an answer. I'm going to have to decide one way or the other. But yeah, I mean, and that's a part of our B Corp commitments, and it's a part of our governance structure that, we're doing things in the best interest of humanity. So it's constantly weighing that.
Thank you so much for talking with me. I have to tell you, fascinating conversation, fascinating company, and thank you for doing what you do.
Thanks, Robert. Appreciate it.
It's been a pleasure meeting you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Coffee with Mr. IoT. To subscribe or to listen to more episodes, search for Coffee with Mr. IoT in your favorite podcatcher, or find us online at deloitte.com/US/Coffee with Mr. IoT. To watch the video version of our show, go to YouTube and search Coffee with Mr. IoT.